These lovely little berries are bilberry, Vaccinium myrtillus, or depending on where you live, you may also know them as windberry, whortleberry, blackberry, or one of its many other common names. They're closely related to blueberries, and as you can see, they look very similar. Bilberry likes acidic and nutrient poor soil, and it mostly grows in higher elevations. It's found in huge numbers on mountains, moors and heathlands. And occasionally you'll find it in acidic soil woodlands, almost always next to silver birch. I find bilberry growing in woodlands grows a lot smaller, and it doesn't fruit as well because it doesn't get enough sunlight. Bilberry isn't as common in England apart from in some moorlands, but it's very common in Scotland and Wales. Areas such as Snowdonia, the Black Mountains and Brecon Beacons, it can grow in huge patches. If you find ferns, gorse and heather, then you're probably in about the right habitat for finding bilberry. The bilberry is related to heather, and it forms low growing shrubs that grow in dense clumps, usually up to about 50 centimetres. The stems grow upright before branching out and becoming bushy, and the stems have a square profile so you can roll them in your fingers. The fresh growth is bright green, and the older growth is brown and woody. The leaves are oval and have a pointed tip, and they are serrated. And they grow in an alternate arrangement up the stem. The leaves are bright green when they're younger. As they mature, they go a deep red. The fruits appear from midsummer and ripen until around September. They're a deep purple colour with a whitish bloom, and they have a cogwheel-like circle at the end of the berry where the flower was. And you only get one fruit per stalk, they're not in bunches. They're smaller than the cultivated blueberries, but in my opinion they taste much better. They have a lovely sweet flavour when they're fully ripe, though they contain tannins, so can be a little acidic. They're fine to eat raw, but you shouldn't eat too many raw because the tannins can cause stomach issues. But I always eat at least a few handfuls when I'm out picking them, and I've never had any problems. The cultivated blueberries that we can buy in the shops have quite a pale flesh, but as you can see, blueberries have a nice deep red flesh. Bilberries make a great jam or jelly, and they're also good bait in muffins. The slightly acidic flavour works well in a sorbet, and they can also be dried and used like currants or raisins. The berries are really nutritious and they're very high in antioxidants. And the young leaves can also be used to make tea. It's a slow process collecting bilberries as they are fairly small, and you may have to brush the stems aside to find the best berries, but I can happily spend a whole afternoon foraging them as it's nice and relaxing. And as they usually grow in higher elevations, you often get a great view when you're doing it too. This is sea aster, a lovely edible plant in the daisy or Asteraceae family. It's well worth getting to know this plant if you live near the coast. It grows in mudflats and salt marshes all around the coast and in estuaries. Sea aster has thick, succulent leaves that make a great vegetable, especially when sautéed in butter. They're already quite salty, so there's no need to season them. They've got a nice, salty, irony flavour. The leaves are lanceolate, or long and narrow, and younger ones are more spoon-shaped. There's nothing dangerous really that you can mistake this for, especially in its coastal or estuary habitat. It does look very similar to sea lavender, which has thinner and less succulent leaves. Sea lavender is also edible, but not as tasty. The sea aster leaves can actually be picked as early or mid-spring, but they're still good this time of year when there's not as many good greens around, and they'll keep sending up new young shoots right into late summer. I eat a lot of sea aster this time of year, and it's also much easier to ID now because this is when the flowers appear. So they're quite daisy-like in appearance. They've got the yellow centre, but they've got quite thin petals that are either mauve or white. You'll get loads of these flower shoots coming up all through these tidal areas, and they lose their petals quite easily, these flowers. In a strong wind you'll see them all blowing off. This is about the stage you want them here, about this size. I do actually quite like eating these raw as well. Blackberries have to be one of the most common fruits in the UK. In other parts of Europe that I've visited, they do have them, but they don't seem to be quite as common. But in the UK, pretty much every patch of waste ground, every hedgerow or roadside has blackberry. And just look at the size of the patch I've got here. And this time of year, they're perfectly ripe. You can often pick them as early as mid-July, but early August is the best in my area. And this year seems to be a really good year for them. See, a bumper harvest. There's really big, juicy fruits and lots of them. Just look at these beauties here. They're absolutely perfect. Ones this good, never make it into the pot, they get eaten straight away. It's best to wait until they're completely ripe. It makes quite a lot of difference. So like this one where it's quite soft, that's perfect. And they've got like a almost bright sheen to them when they're perfectly ripe. Yeah, it makes a lot of difference to the flavour. They're a lot sweeter. If they're not quite ripe yet, they can be quite acidic. See those ones there, they're perfect. And that one's still a little bit hard, so he's not quite ready yet. And they should just pretty much fall off the stem like that one did. they give any resistance when you're trying to pick them, then they're not ripe. It's a fruit that most kids in the UK learn to pick from quite a young age, because there's nothing dangerous that you can mistake them for. Blackberries make a good jam or cordial, and they go well with apple in crumbles or pies, and of course they can just be eaten as they are straight off the bush. It's a fruit I don't find you really need to worry about overpicking in the UK because they are so abundant, and I find that a lot of them just are left to rot on the bush at the end of the season. A little tip when picking them, it's good to get a bag or something that you can attach to your belt when picking, so you can keep two hands free to pick them. I use a ammunition dump bag that you can get from an army surplus store. They're really handy. This is wild Angelica, Angelica sylvestris. It's a fairly common plant in the UK. It likes damp places, so look in damp meadows, woodlands and along streams. It normally grows to about 1.5 meters tall, and the plant has an overall purple pinkish colour to it. So it's a member of the carrot or Apiaceae family, and this one needs extra care because it has a slight resemblance to hemlock water dropwort, which is deadly poisonous, and they both grow in the same habitats. The main central stem is upright, and it's either solid purple or slightly green with a purple tinge, and the stem is completely smooth and hairless, which in the Apiaceae family is often a warning sign, because both poison hemlock and hemlock water dropwort have smooth hairless stems, but it's fine in this case of Angelica. Angelica's main central stem is hollow, and you'll get a nice sweet smell from the cut stem. The flowers of wild Angelica are loved by most pollinators. The flowers grow in umbels, and they're split into secondary umbels, which are quite widely spaced. The tiny flowers have 5 white or pinkish petals. Wild Angelica can also look quite similar to the edible common hogweed, but wild Angelica usually flowers a bit later, around late July and August. The leaves of wild Angelica are split into smaller leaflets, and the terminal leaflet is always divided into 3. And the margins of the leaflets are finely toothed. The leaves have a long petiole, and that petiole is attached to the base by a large sheath. And very importantly, the petiole or leaf stem has a channeled groove running down the top. Now, hemlock water dropwort does not have this groove. All parts of wild Angelica are edible. It's mostly used for its stems, which are nice candied. You want to go for the young, flexible, tender stems. The older ones can be quite tough, so you don't want to eat ones like that. They've got a sweet floral flavour, quite similar to Alexander's. The stems and younger leaves are also good stewed with fruits and rhubarb. Just remember to be extra careful with this plant. If you have any doubts, then just leave it. This is a Rowan tree, Sorbus aucuparia. Its berries are edible, but only when cooked. They're mildly toxic raw and can cause stomach upsets. The only thing I've really used the berries for is making Rowan jelly. It's quite bitter and sour. The flavour isn't for everyone, but I really like it. It goes really well with cheeses and cold meats. And Rowan berries are very high in pectin, so they can be added into jams to help them set. And apparently the berries are also good fermented, though I haven't tried that yet. The berries are at their best in August and September, and you can see they really stand out this time of year. The berries grow in dense clusters and they're bright red or orange when they're ripe. And you can see at the end of the berry they've got the remnants of the calyx, like you get on an apple. Rowan trees prefer acidic and nutrient poor soil. In the wild they'll mostly be found in moorlands and highlands, so look in similar sort of places as Bilberry. And they're also found in urban environments. They're planted in gardens, parks and alongside roads. The bark of Rowan is silvery grey and sometimes it has little white patches. The leaves are compound and they look quite similar to ash leaves. In fact, Rowan is also called mountain ash. They have 6 to 8 pairs of opposing leaflets and 1 terminal leaflet, and the leaflets are serrated. So you may mistake Rowan for other Sorbus species that have similar looking berries, but all Sorbus have edible berries when cooked. Hazelnuts don't fully mature until around early September, but you can actually harvest them at this stage in August. As long as the nut or kernel inside is fully formed, then these are good to eat. I know some people that actually prefer them when they're at this stage. It's about this time of year when squirrels start harvesting them, and the grey squirrel in the UK is a highly invasive animal, and any of these sort of hazel trees in woodlands get absolutely stripped bare by the squirrels. So unless you know any spots where the squirrels leave them alone, then you can let them mature. Otherwise, take some of these home, give them a go. So you can tell they're mature because the outer casing is still pale or light green. When they're fully mature, this casing will go brown. The only thing is they won't store when they're at this stage. They'll go off pretty quick, so you want to eat them straight away. It's not until the casings go brown and they're mature, then you can store them over winter. So you want to remove the outer husk from the nut casing. If you're at home, you can just use a nut cracker if you've got one, but I quite like these as a snack when I'm out camping. So just get the nut and place it on a rock, and then get a hammer stone, one with a nice flat bottom if you can find it. And then you just want to tap the top of the nut, not hard enough so you crush the nut inside there. You can see with this one the outer casing is still green, but the nut inside is developed. It's not worth picking them when they're at this stage. You see the nut or kernel in the middle is still underdeveloped and it's surrounded by a sort of spongy foam. If they're like this, it's best to leave it for another week or so.